we got cash flow, and then we just got equity from these properties. Because in real estate, everybody always says you make money when you buy real estate. And that's true. You do make some cash flow. You do make a good buying purchase, but you really make money in real estate when you exit.
Welcome to The Real Deal, a commercial real estate investing podcast. I'm your host, Aman. There's a ton going on in the world right now, and much of it impacts real estate investors. The Real Deal podcast will take a look at what's happening and how it influences you as a real estate investor. Each episode is a 20-minute segment dedicated to distilling the day's most important news, so you can stay up to date on what's going on in the world and how it might affect the commercial real estate market.
Welcome back to another episode of the Cashflow Capitalist Show. My name is Aman, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Gino Barbaro. Hey, Gino, welcome to the show.
Aman, thanks for having me on. And two words that I really like, cash flow and capitalist. I like that. It's an excellent name for a show, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So tell us about you in 30 seconds. Like, tell us who you are.
30 seconds. Father of 6. We homeschool the kids. Multifamily investor, educator, mentor, father. We own 1,800 units, multifamily, and I've been doing multifamily for about the past 15 years.
So how did you get into real estate, by the way?
Wow. How much time do you got, Aman? For me, I got into the restaurant business years and years ago with my father. My father was an immigrant from Italy. And at the age of 22, I was working for AIG, big company, the insurance company. I hated the job. I wasn't the cubicle person. So I said, Dad, let's open a restaurant. We did. And we owned that restaurant for over 20 years. But around 2008, I'm like, I need to make more money. I need to figure something out. The journey that everyone else has, they're stuck in their W-2 or they're stuck in their rut or a small business and it's not producing enough capital or cash flow. And I found this real estate thing. And I met Jake in 2009. He was a pharmaceutical rep that was going to the restaurant, taking orders and bringing them to doctors' offices. We struck up a really good relationship. He moved to Knoxville in 2011 and we decided to partner up, and it took us 18 months to find that first deal. But we bought that first deal together back in 2013. And Aman, for myself, my parents were sort of entrepreneurial. They had a couple of smaller properties. So for me, it was just natural saying, you know what? I don't want to fix and flip. I can't. I'm working in the restaurant. I don't have the time. I don't want another job. I want to be able to create some kind of income on the side. And hopefully one day when that income is enough, I can leave the restaurant gig and go into real estate full time.
So you had a restaurant, which is more like a family business because you started with your father. And how hard was it to come out from the restaurant and getting into something new?
The most difficult thing about that whole transition was my mindset, because my parents were both immigrants. Save, 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 and you can't get too big. Stay small. There's too much risk. Gino, you've got a good job. Most of your friends, they hate their job. You've got this small. I'm like, Mom, I don't like my job either. Just because it makes me a little bit more income, for me, it was very challenging. And until I started listening to Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins and all these other people, that I'm like, wow, Steve Jobs is a billionaire, but what's he doing differently than the most of us? He was just thinking bigger. He was surrounding himself with much better people. He was educating himself. He had a vision. So I always tell people in 20-something years, I had one restaurant. And within 5 years of partnering up with Jake, we had almost 1,000 units. And what was the difference? The difference was I have all of a sudden got away from that mindset of let's stay small, let's not take any risk, to how do we get the next deal? Why do we have to limit ourselves? And the biggest thing that I saw in our business was we created values. With the restaurant, it was a mom and pop, like you said, we're just running it day to day. Let's work this week, we get paid. Let's work next week. It wasn't any kind of system. It wasn't any kind of process. When we started investing, all of a sudden we're creating wealth. We're building a business just using multifamily real estate, and we're actually instituting and putting in core values. What are the core values and the mission state of the business? Instead of blaming the employees, blame the upper level management, the Jake and Gino, who don't have core values, who can hire and fire off of those core values.
And what are your core values that you stick to it no matter what?
We want to stick to it no matter what. Sometimes you don't, and that's when companies fail, or that's when you make bad decisions. And it's very difficult to stick to core values, especially when times get tough. But ours are people first, make it happen, extreme ownership, unwavering ethics, and growth mindset. And all five of those really come from me, Jake, and the executive team when we were doing this coaching. We had to coach for this. We didn't know how to scale up a company. So we went out and found mentors and paid for education. Say, how do you scale a company? Well, the first thing is if you're going to go from point A to point B, well, let's set a map. Before you go into the forest, you want the map, right? That's the problem. We always go into the forest. There's no map. We didn't have a map. We were out there with 500 plus units. And we're like, we're having problems scaling. Well, do you have all these different things that you need to do to scale a company, whether it's your cadence of accountability, your core values, your systems, your processes? We didn't have them. So we had to learn them. And the first part was really flushing out your core values and living by them, whether you're hiring an employee, whether you're hiring a vendor, whether you're raising capital and you're syndicating deals and you're actually going out there and looking for investors, or you're partnering up with somebody. If you don't have those core values, how do you choose the right partner for yourself? So I would challenge everybody right now, think about what your values are, what your core values are. It may not take a day or two. It may take some time for you to flush them out. But once you have them out, they're on paper, you can start living by those core values.
And did those core values, you got it from your family, from your friend? How did you get across that?
For me, people first was a pretty easy one for me because every time I went into a relationship, I was a people pleaser. I wanted to please people. So for me, starting Jake and Gino, I always wanted to have a company that people wanted to work for. They wanted to come to. I created the Jake and Gino community because I love the mentorship. I love having the students come to our events. So I always want to put people first. For me, growth mindset was pivotal. Because for the last 15 years, all I've been doing is trying to read books, trying to get uncomfortable, trying to learn new skill sets. And I think if you're not growing, you're regressing, as Dr. David Gary Chapman said. I think that's important. I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to learn. So that's how I chose that core value. Extreme ownership. I've learned as having 6 children, you need to have extreme ownership. I'm trying to teach my children, their behaviors and their actions have consequences. If you do something well, you get rewarded. If you do something bad, you're going to get punished. And you have to own up to it. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Just have ownership over it. And I think if you can have, for us, that core value, we're always making mistakes. But if you say, hey, time out, I made a mistake. I forgot to put you on the list. Let me make that up. It goes back to extreme ownership, and it goes back to the people first aspect of it.
Just don't be like, play the blame game.
No. It's one of the most difficult things that a person needs to understand. Once they accept responsibility for the actions that they've had and the success that they've created, they can move forward. And in 2008, the recession comes. My father had just passed away. And I'm sitting at the restaurant and I'm like, I don't like this. I hate where I am right now. I want to get better. I'm not making enough money. And I looked around and I'm like, why is that person making more? What is he doing? What is she doing? And when I read the book by T. Harv Eker, The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, he's talking about the fruit is in your roots and you have to take full responsibility. And at first, I really hated that message. And the fact that at that age, all the success, all the money that I made was all because of this. Of the skills and what I learned up to that point, I felt like a failure. But once I realized it's a learning point. I mean, I can stay there and I can blame the economy. I can blame the presidents. I can blame real estate. I can blame anything. It's not going to get me anywhere. The blame game is going to keep you where you are. The responsibility all of a sudden is, yes, I take responsibility, but what do I do from this day forward? And that's when everything changed for me. I got into the mentorship programs. I actually was actively looking at real estate deals, and that's how I met Jake. Right. So now I'm responsible for trying to find another job and trying to find more income. Jake comes into my life. Then he moves to Knoxville. Responsible. Let's look at deals in Knoxville. So that responsibility has led to an amazing, I guess, career growth and path for me. And I think most people need to understand it's okay to be a victim. But once you're in that victim, there is no solutions. You're going to be negative. And sometimes you do need to be in that victim. It's okay to be in that mode. But most people sit there, they like it because all of a sudden you're a victim. People are going to come by you and say, oh, how you doing? I'm sorry. You're going to get a lot of love from people. Not many people get love from someone who says, I'm going to make my own path. I'm going to create it's a very different dynamic. So if you're in the victim stage, sometimes somebody passes away or you lose a good friend or something happens. We need to be in that victim mode. It's okay. But the problem is most people don't understand that they're in that mode all the time. And who do they attract? People who have victim mentalities themselves. So you get people in that group. Whereas if you're responsible and you're making it happen and you're going out there, who are you going to attract other people who have the similar mentality.
You always attract what you are. You can attract a better person if you are already bad. And your success also depends on like a kind of people you hang around with. If you hang around with all the victims and everything, you're just gonna get victimized all the time in your mind because that person think like me, I think like him. So I think that's a good match.
It's funny you say that. That I was just talking to a friend the other day. That's why I won't watch the news anymore, because it's confirmation bias. I'm always looking for the side that agrees with me. And okay, hey, I think this way. Bam. I watch the news. It's just I'm confirming myself. Whereas the person who's truly intelligent says to themselves, let me look at both sides. Let me take a look at both arguments and which one has the best argument. Most of us don't do that. So I just decided to opt out of that. I don't really care about that. And I really want to myself try to be as open-minded as possible and to learn both sides of the argument. So be careful if you're doing that.
And it's kind of funny that you mentioned about the news because I read Stoic philosophy. So even they say that stop checking news because every time you check news, it's either negative. Because if something is positive, nobody's going to listen to it. If it's negative, everybody wants to attract more. Yeah, Trump is doing this. This is happening. CNN, Fox, and this is biased. Stop checking news. Nothing is real. Just follow what you want to do. The world around there is all fake. They all created just to make you realize that, oh, this person is bad, this person is good, red, blue, red, blue. It's just game. Keep going all the time. Relax, take it easy. And just focus on you and your family first.
Yes. It's one of those things where it is propaganda. I mean, I'm going to say it, both sides. What they're doing is they're trying to create clickbait. They want you to click for advertising. And any story they put out there, it's not factual. They fact check it. Then they change it 3 days later, but it's been out already. So if you're getting your news from whatever source, just be careful. I mean, the only news that I try to read real estate news. I try to read news about the economy. But listen, we were reading news that inflation was transitory. We were reading news that rents weren't going to go up. We were reading news about the real estate market crashing, and it was all wrong. So you have to make your own informed decisions, see what's going on. And for me, cutting that out of my life has honestly been a godsend for me these last, I guess, 6 months to a year.
I totally get you. And Tony Robbins says, everything has a pattern. If you see the pattern of news, you're going to find the same thing. When Trump became the president, same kind of pattern. Now Biden, same kind of pattern. I'm like, it's not changing. Just turn off the news, focus on your life.
Yes.
And
I agree.
And let's get back to your story again. So when you started into real estate, I kind of remember you told me last time when we met, it took like 18 months for you to find a first deal. Can you share something about that?
I can go before that, before I met Jake, which I think is really even more important. In 2005 was really my first deal by myself. And I met a gentleman, I like to call him Maserati Mike because he had a nice gold Maserati. I mean, damn, that was a nice car. I met him and I'm working at the restaurant. And I'm like, passive income in air quotes. And I just gave the guy a lot of money. I lost a ton of money from that deal. But what I learned was all of a sudden, it's not just Maserati Mike's fault. It's remember the responsibility. I need to take responsibility for investing in his deal, for not knowing mobile home parks, which it was, not doing due diligence. I never saw the property. So that was my journey early on. And then jumping into the mentorships. And the reason why it took Jake and myself 18 months, we didn't have a framework. We didn't have buy right, manage right, finance right. We didn't know how to talk to brokers. We really didn't know how to understand and how to underwrite deals. And that's a lot of the stuff that we teach at Jake and Gino. And it took us 18 months because we were newbies in an East Tennessee market. Jake had just moved there. He was young. And for us, it just took a long time to create those relationships with the brokers. I don't know why. I think part of the problem was Jake was like the salesperson trying to sell the broker when you should be saying to the broker, what deals do you have? How can we make a deal? As far as saying, hey, I'm here, I'm going to buy your deal. And it's ironic because 3 months after that first deal, we bought our second deal. And 6 months after the second deal, we bought our third deal. So momentum in the real estate space is so important. Don't wait to do a 50 or 7 unit deal. If there's a 3 unit or a 5 unit, you're just starting out, buy it. Because then all of a sudden the broker knows you closed the deal. The title company knows you closed the deal. You have a CPA, you have a property management company. All of a sudden they see that you had some kind of success. They're willing to work with you. So don't wait. But for us, that 18 months was challenging because I'm working at the restaurant. He's working down in Knoxville. And it's very similar to what's going on right now in this part of the market cycle. Back in 2011 and 2012, there was a lot of deals. There were a lot of deals. Unfortunately, the credit market sucked. You couldn't get a loan. There was no capital raising. So great, the deal's there, but you can't fund it. And the rents are in the toilet because GDP is at 1%. So it was a very strange and very different time. Whereas now we're going back to a certain element of that market cycle where there's going to be deals out there. There's not going to be as much capital to raise, right? And I think the market and the economy is going to slow down. So I think we're getting back into a buyer's market, maybe not as great as 2011, 2012, but cycles are called cycles. They come back. Buyer's market to the seller's market. Now the seller's market's going back into the buyer's market.
I think this is the same cycle, same pattern, keep going on after 10, 15 years all the time.
You said patterns. It's very important that you said Tony Robbins. It really is a pattern. Once you learn those 4 patterns of the buyer of the cycle, you can say, I can buy this deal in this market, that deal in that market. That's a very, very excellent point that you made earlier on.
And Tony Robbins also said, first you can find the pattern, recognize the pattern, and you can change the pattern. That's how you get rich. First, find the pattern, like how it's going, then recognize it. Then you can change it, how you can put yourself into that, and you can make a lot of money. And those patterns are not only in the business, in your life too. How you behave, how you were behaving in your past relationship, everything is a pattern. If you can understand it, you can recognize it, you can change it, you can change yourself.
That's called awareness. You need to be aware, and most of us aren't aware, or most of us aren't in touch with ourselves. And I'll give you a quick point as far as personal development, how you say how we react. I would challenge anybody listening to this is when you have a negative reaction or something's going on and you don't like what you did or what you said, go back to your childhood. Go dive deep into your childhood and see if there's a pattern there of something happening where your mother or your father yelled at you, or you got embarrassed, or you were bullied, or something happened with a sibling. And then all of a sudden it's like, And for me, a quick example was when I was 5 years old, I went to the grocery store with my grandmother. So my grandmother's Italian. She can't speak English. And at that time, there's no credit cards. So I found these toy soldiers. I wanted to buy them so badly. And grandma didn't have any money. And she's saying to me in Italian, when your mom comes, we'll come back and buy them. And that left such an imprint on me that I had to leave the store without buying them. I had such a craving for them. And I'll never forget, I don't even remember if I went back and bought them, but that left a desire. Every time as an adult, something would come up, I would get an email, or I'd have to do a project, or I'd have to get on a call. I would have to do it. And it'd be I'd be fearful. I'd be nervous that if I missed it, something would happen. So I recognized that pattern. Wow, I got that from grandma. I got that from not being able to buy it and not knowing what happened. So all I did was I recognized the pattern, and I asked myself, what's the worst thing that can happen if I miss an email and I wait a day or two, not respond? The world's not going to end. But understanding that where that fear came from and where those reactions came from and where that response from the stimulus came from is so important. That's the first step of awareness. And that's the first step of understanding what the patterns are going on in your life.
First, you have to put a light on yourself and see where the darkness is. So, and how did you so rapidly scale to 1,500 units in like less than 5 years?
Luck.
Oh, come on.
I think I was lucky.
I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in luck. No.
It's a little bit of luck and of understanding that we didn't take money out of the business. Everyone says, hey, go into real estate, quit full time. We had bought our first couple of properties and we were able to refinance the money out. And I'm not a big spender. My money blueprint was save, buy assets. So when you refi out $3 or $4 million out of these properties, you just kept buying, and we kept buying, and we kept buying into the deals. We weren't living off that money because I had the restaurant. I was still working at the restaurant, making enough to live. Was it hard? Absolutely. There were days that I worked 70, 80-hour weeks, but to me, it was worth it. And if you don't want to scale that big, you don't have to. We just got into the right part of the cycle where things are going up. We got cash flow, and then we just got equity from these properties, because in real estate, everybody always says you make money when you buy real estate. And that's true. You do make some cash flow. You do make a good buying purchase, but you really make money in real estate when you exit. That's the Bill Ham model. And I'll steal that from him, because think about it. When you're exiting a deal, whether it's a refi or it's a sale, you're pulling all that equity out. Now, what you do with that equity is really, really important. We just put it into the next deal and into the next deal. And after 3 or 4 years, you've got 300 or 400 units. All of a sudden, those are producing cash flow. You can live off that cash flow, and those big equity chunks that you're getting, just use those to go into the next deal.
Bill Ham is a smart guy.
Yes, he is a smart guy.
He's a
lot
really
smarter
smart
than
guy.
me.
Oh, a lot smarter than me. I just sometimes wonder, I'm like, how this guy has a lot of knowledge.
He has a lot of experience. And he's a great motivator. He's a great teacher. He's an excellent teacher, and he's always reading.
Yeah, always. When you meet him, you can say like, this guy having a lot of fun too, but he has a lot of knowledge too. How this guy like manage everything. I'm like, wow. And what's the 3-step framework do you follow for every real estate?
That's a great question. I mean, that's the one thing that was lacking for me back in 2005. Then I bought another deal in 2006. And then when I met Jake, I bought that first deal. We were fortunate. We bought it for a good price. We had pretty good financing on it, but we didn't know how to manage. So the 3-step framework, it's buy right, finance right, and manage right. It is really, we call it in the shape of a wheelbarrow because the 2 back legs are the buy and the finance. Once you've done those, they're fixed. The manage right is the wheel of the wheelbarrow. And that's what you need to do day-to-day operations, whether you're managing the property or whether you're having somebody else manage it for you, third party. Those are the fundamental ways that you need to buy the deal. And what I found to be exciting is if you're buying a business or if you're buying a mobile home park or a single family home, you can replicate this 3-step framework into any kind of asset class that you're buying because those are the fundamentals. You need to know how to buy this asset. You need to know how to finance this asset, and you need to know how to manage the asset. Now, obviously, there's some differences between self-storage and multifamily on the buy right criteria and maybe managing the asset, but understanding those are the 3 pillars, you can look at any asset through that vein, and you're much more successful. You're going to limit your downside risk tremendously by following those three steps.
First, and educate yourself enough so you can follow the 3-step framework.
Yes. Just go to jakeandgino.com. We have Wheelbarrow Profits there. I mean, if you want to reach out to any of the listeners I'm on, if they want to reach out, just email me, gino@jakeandgino.com. I'll send you a PDF copy of the book, Wheelbarrow Profits. We wrote it back in 2016. The framework is in there. Once you start reading it, all of a sudden you're like, multifamily is not as complicated as people think it is. They just see these buildings and like, oh, I got to be rich to own this building. No. You need to understand the business and the framework. That's really what you need to do.
And you also follow a motto called buy right and sit tight. Can you tell us about that too?
The other one is if it doesn't cash flow, you let the grass grow.
That's Jake. That's our model. That's Jake's. I never saw you saying that. Now you're copying it.
Jake, Gino, we're doing the same people, but
now you're copying it. That's Jake's. That's not yours.
Rip off and duplicate, my friend. No, but buy right and sit tight for us is that's one of the biggest lessons that we learned. And not so much buy right and sit tight, but Aman, for anybody listening, when they're looking at a potential property or potential opportunity, anything in life, how are you exiting the opportunity? Or are you going to exit? And our very first deal, the deal that I did in the mobile home park, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I bought it. Am I going to continue to operate it, cash flow and sell? We're going to refi. I had no clarity on that. Our very first deal, me and Jake, buy right and sit tight. We got lucky because we bought at a good price point. We bought in a great market. We bought in a great area. So for us, that's been our model. We've sold about 500 units. So there's certain assets that we didn't like long-term. We sold them out. But understand, every time you buy an asset or you invest in a business or you create a company, what's the exit plan for that? Whether it's a year from now or 20 years from now. And the reason why I say that is it'll help you with the debt you're going to get on the deal. If you're going to go short-term, you don't get long-term fixed rate financing. If you're going long-term, protect yourself and get that long-term fixed rate financing. So buy right and sit tight is when I talk to all of these super successful real estate investors, people who are older in the 70s and 80s, there's a couple things they say that they made mistakes on. Number one, they didn't buy enough. Number two, they sold too quickly. And then meaning they sold too quickly, they didn't hold on long enough. They saw that shiny object, like, oh, I made 30% of my money, I'm out. They probably left 300 or 400% on the table. So understanding that in that buy right criteria, where you're buying assets that are really in good areas, that have good median incomes, that have good appreciation potential, those are the assets that you want to buy right, and sit tight with those assets.
Can you do buy right and sit tight with syndication, or you only can do when you do JV or something like this?
Good question. It depends on your investors. It depends on your track record. For us, we had an investment, a syndication back in 2018, and we bought it for less than $6 million. We ended up selling it for $10 million. We could have possibly refinanced that deal. The problem was on the private placement memorandum, the investors would have gotten the majority of the refi. We would have gotten a bigger loan, and then we would have continued to go on. If you want that strategy, that model, what I would do is try to create success. And then in your next syndication, put money of your own on the limited partner side, but have the specific guidelines where you're telling your investors, this may be, a 10-year hold and longer. Are you in? A lot of investors are going to say no. But if you show to them, hey, within 3 years, I'm going to be able to, operate this property and potentially refinance that money out and distribute the refinance proceeds. And oh, by the way, you're probably going to be made whole, and then you're going to continue to cash flow going forward, and all your depreciation benefits are going to be held. That's something that can be very attractive to certain operators and certain investors. Not every investor likes that model. A lot of investors like to get their money back. They like to velocitize their money and put it into another deal. My only challenge to them is if I have a golden goose and I love this deal, it's a newer asset in a great market that's appreciated, that if I have to sell this, I've got to go put the money somewhere else. Why would I want to do that? I'd rather keep this asset and continue to operate this asset and continue to provide great returns to my investors and let time do its magic. And 5 years from now or 8 years from now, that asset continues to appreciate. You're continuing to get the cash flow benefits from that asset.
And can you also explain what is a cash flow in real estate? People love it, and they're like, if there's no cash flow, I'm not investing. And some people love to invest in as appreciation. So why cash flow is so important?
So for us, we're just fortunate we're in a market where we can get that cash flow. When I started my investment journey in New York, I was about 45 minutes north of the city. There was no cash flow. It was very hard to cash flow on the property. So it was an appreciation game. And there's nothing wrong with that because cash flow gets you out of your job. Equity or appreciation keeps you out of your job. So if you can work both, it's wonderful. That you want to get into real estate for the cash flow. But if you're constrained in a market that asset prices are high and there's no cash flow, you've got to buy for X and hopefully you can sell for Y. To me, there's more speculation in that model. If you understand the speculation, it's like buying a stock without a dividend. If you're buying a stock without a dividend, you're hoping that Apple, you buy at $100 a share, it goes to $120 a share, and you're able to sell it. But if you buy Exxon at $80 a share and it has a dividend of, let's say, 50 cents, that dividend is what we would consider cash flow in real estate. That's paying you every single month. And then if you're operating Exxon really well, Exxon's going to appreciate. So you have both buckets. You have cash flow to pay the bills and to put some money on the table, put gas in the car, put food on the table, put clothes in your kids. And then the equity, ultimately, you can crystallize it, pull it out, and go out and buy another Exxon. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And hope is not a strategy. Okay. Somebody said it right.
Yes, I've hoped a lot of things, and a lot of things that I hope to usually don't come true.
And hope is not a strategy. Never follow that.
Yes.
So, at this point, market is kind of shaky economy. We have no idea. Recently, Feds did not increase their interest rates. So what do you think? What 3 tips do you want to give to somebody else for today's market? How to navigate today's market?
The only time you'll ever get into real estate is when you're ready. I got into real estate in 2008 and 9 with the mentors, right? That was the worst time ever. We were going through seismic shifts. I was just ready. I was fed up with my life. And the thing is, I learned how to buy in that market cycle. This market cycle is coming back. People are heading towards the exits right now. There's a lot of fear in the market. And that's actually really good for people who are investing. So now is actually the time to get into real estate, to create the relationships, to learn the 3-step framework, to learn the markets, to learn what brokers are in those markets. So when the economy really does reset and take a pause, asset prices are dropping, you're not saying to yourself, I'm going to wait till the market crashes. You won't even know the market's crashed because you haven't even started yet. And the other thing is, you're buying this for the long term. You're young, Aman. If you're saying to yourself, I'm only looking at this for the next 2 or 3 years, you've got the next 30 to 40 years of your life at least. So why are you worrying about what's going to happen the next 2 years? Get into it right now. Take your lumps right now. Learn the business right now. And as by the time you get ready to go, the market cycle is shifted and changed. You're just going to have to learn how to buy in that market cycle. That's why the education is so important. But for us, we've got a 96 unit deal in the contract. We put on the contract on Monday. We're going to be closing in excess of 300 units this year. That's really good for us. I mean, that's a night. If you do 300 units every year. So my point is, everyone's saying there's no deals out there. We're saying there are deals out there. There's not as much capital out there, and there's a lot of people who are heading to the exits. Now, the caveat is there may be less deals in the market, but whoever has to sell is going to actually have to take a discount on the price because of where the cost of capital is, and that's the opportunity. If you need to sell and you're a mom and pop, guess what? You're going to sell at what prices should be. If you don't have to sell, you can hold on. But we have this thing coming up in October. All of a sudden, this debt's starting to expire. There's going to be a lot of people with these assets and these debts that took short-term debt 3 years ago thinking that they were smart. Now, all of a sudden, their 3.5% interest rate goes to 8 or 9. And it's like, what am I going to do? They're either going to give back the keys, or they're going to do some type of forbearance, or they're going to sell at a discount. And there's going to be opportunity coming from that. And next year, the same time in October, have a ton of debt expiring. So don't wait. If you're ready to get into real estate, into multifamily, single family, now is the time, only if you're ready for it.
Perfect. That's a great answer. And what are the 3 KPIs do you focus more on asset management side?
So for us, when we're looking at the asset management side, there's a lot of different metrics we look at. Well, one of them is delinquency. I mean, we want to see how many asset units are being delinquent, and we have what we call a weekly pulse or weekly checklist for every single property. I'm sure you've seen it. It's basically checking the income every month against last month's income. We're looking at vacant unrented versus vacant rented, because we take in something called non-refundable move-in fees. So we want to see how many units are actually vacant. Very important. The other metric we look at is economic occupancy versus physical occupancy. It's great that you have 10 people renting an apartment complex, but if only 8 of them are paying, that means it's 80% economically occupied versus 100% physically occupied. And that delta between there is where your profit is. If you can try to collect those other 2 rents, that's where it is. So you're looking at that. We're looking at that delinquency component, and we're looking also at renewals. Believe it or not, renewals are such a powerful tool in this business, whereas on average, between 30 to 50% of people aren't renewing their leases. If you can get it out 60 days out and make sure that you can get renewals, it'll save you time, it'll save you turn costs, and you'll actually be creating a community of people who want to be in your community.
And the most expensive unit is a vacant unit.
That's right.
And what are the 3 key team members that is essential for success, that you need in your life for success?
This is for me. For me, one of the keys before I met Jake was a coach. I needed a coach. I started mentoring with a couple of different groups. I even in 2015 had a life coach. I went to become a certified professional life coach because I thought I needed the personal development. So for me, on the top would be mentorship and coaching. I think the other component for me was having an amazing wife. I mean, someone who's there, who when I said to her, Julia, I can't stay at the restaurant anymore. This is soul sucking. This is killing me. I said, I want to try this real estate thing. And she wasn't there doubting me. She wasn't there saying, hey, we have 5 kids at the time. We can't feed our kids. She said, hey, listen, I trust you. And having somebody in your corner who trusts you, but at the same time, she's holding me accountable. Because if I'm going to take this big leap in life, I need to prove to her that I'm doing the work. So I'm talking about people in your lives. So whether it's a family member, a spouse, a brother, that was really important to me. And I think the third person, when you're talking about Jake, my partner itself, that Jake was the catalyst for everything, because we made a great partnership. He was down doing boots on the ground early on, and I was helping him run the business and scaling the business and helping him underwrite deals. And that whole mastermind was so important. So for me, it was my wife, my coaches, and then Jake. And if you want to get into the business itself, if you're doing third-party property management, it really is a property management company. I mean, that they are so key and so crucial to running the operations of the business that, we teach the manager right. And if you want to go out and hire a third party, we'll teach people how to hire a third-party property management company and hold them accountable. It's about expectations. If you know how to run this business and you're hiring somebody to run your property, well, you have to set expectations with them. You have to tell them what to do. You're handing over the keys to them. They're an important component. They're the face of the business. When a resident walks into the unit, first person they see is that property manager. You got to make sure that they're on the same team as you and they're aligned with your core values.
Perfect. That's a great answer. And when and why did you decide to start Jake and Gino as a community?
When I decided to leave New York back in 2015, I just wanted to get out of the state, and I came down to Florida. And when I came down here, I was like, we're going to start buying in Jacksonville. It's a different market. Jake's buying in Knoxville. So I looked around, and everyone that I was speaking to thought I was crazy. Jacksonville, it's so expensive in 2017. So I didn't pursue it. So I said, Jake, I need to do something. I said, we just wrote this book. Let's start Jake and Gino. And I thought about creating a business in air quotes. But for me, it became like a passion. I started to really enjoy it. Started to do weekly podcasts. I wrote more books. We started to do events. And all of a sudden, Jake and I became really good investors because we learned so much stuff through these weekly podcasts we were doing. And all of a sudden, they become little masterminds, talking to Robert Kiyosaki, talking to T. Harv Eker. I mean, getting, Garrett Gunderson on the call, Dr. Gary Chapman, like I said. The list goes on and on of all these experts that were spending an hour in a week with us. I'm like, wow, how to scale up. We had so many scaling up people in our podcast, and we were learning from them every single week. So it was sort of selfish, but at the same time, I just like the community. I like going to these events, and I like to see people who are struggling saying, it's not only you, I was there. This multifamily thing is real. If you're willing to put work and work at it, it's not a pie in the sky. You can do this. Jake and I have done it. Let's teach you how to do it. That was really the beginning of the whole Jake and Gino brand. And then absolutely, like you said, putting that framework down on paper and teaching it to other people. Every deal we do is through that framework. Every deal we do is through the conveyor belt, through the 3 pillars of real estate. Every deal we negotiate is through our SPY technique. So once we had all this information, getting it down, teaching it to others, we started implementing it even better in our own business.
Perfect.
It's weird how it works.
Yeah. And what advice do you want to give to somebody else who's starting new in real estate?
This is a selfish plug. Join a community. I mean, if you're seriously considering investing money in an asset, whether you're investing as a limited partner and you're going to put $50,000 or $100,000 into a deal, you should go out and you should get some type of professional help. I mean, success leaves clues. Go out and find a company, someone who's actually out there doing it. Go out and find what they've done and follow them. But even before they do that, what I would say is everyone who's looking into investing in anything needs to read the book, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I'm trying to get him on the podcast. He got too big. But that book was, to me, a light bulb moment. I read it a year ago, and I always knew it intuitively, but you need to understand the relationship you have with money. And if you don't value yourself, you're not going to value money, and you're not going to build a real estate portfolio. If you don't know how to save money, or you don't know why you're saving money, you can understand that relationship you have with money. It's going to help you to become a better investor. And you may say to yourself, hey, I don't really like this real estate thing because it's just too boring for me. Well, go out and go learn how to trade crypto, but understand what really suits your needs, and what suits your desires, what suits your strengths. And reading that book, you say to yourself, wow, I've got some limiting beliefs here. I've got some challenges with money. Get that part right first, because we all value ourselves. We have so many inner blocks saying, oh, I don't deserve 100 units. That's not for me intuitively. And why is that? Where have you learned that from? What's holding you back? I had those beliefs. Gino, stay small. We can't take too much risk. We're only immigrants here. Those blocks, hearing that over and over again, will create that scarcity mindset that I had for so many years. And hey, listen, you can choose to continue to adopt that. Just understand that your blueprint or your paradigm has come from somewhere. Understand where it came from, and you have the ability to choose and change that at any day in your life.
Perfect. And if you have to go back and restart all over again, what would you do different?
I really wouldn't want to do that because I wouldn't have my 6 kids now and my wife and all. But the one big thing I did wrong, Aman, was I was always worried about what everyone else thought. And early on, I had a decent amount of equity, decent amount of money. And instead of going out and buying a smaller house within my means, I went out and built houses. So instead of investing in assets, I was investing in these houses. And in 2008, you saw what happened with home values. I built a second house, and the home value went down 50%. My equity's in that house. I should have just said to myself, live within my means. Every time I get some money, save it aside and buy a duplex, or buy a quad, or buy a single family home. Let that thing continue to appreciate, and then I can cash that out, sell it, and continue to grow my net worth. I was doing it backwards. I was relying on that one stream of revenue from the restaurant saying, hey, I make enough money. I deserve to have this home. If I had done it differently, I would have gotten been successful a lot sooner, and I would have achieved financial freedom a lot sooner if I had understood that it doesn't matter what kind of car, what kind of house. That's not what was driving my true happiness. My true happiness was from the family, and was from creating, and was from buying these assets. So understand what brings your true happiness or your true worth, and try to strive and try to achieve towards that.
And everybody everything, and everybody has their own timing, and you have to go through the phase.
Yes. That's why exactly you said, what would I change? I don't really know if I would change anything, because I probably wouldn't be here now if I did change something. So,
and if today is the last day on this planet, what message do you want to give to the world?
Purpose over popularity. And I just was at an event last week. The speaker said that, and it really hit me hard, because we're all out there trying to chase to become the most popular thing. Find out what your purpose is. We all have a different purpose here on this planet. Find out what it is. Try to work towards that. The more purpose and the more conviction you have in your life, in your words, in your message, in your body language, ultimately you're going to create more popularity through it. People do it different. They want the popularity. Then what's my purpose? Figure out what your purpose is. Crush that. Once you have that down, people will find that message, and they will resonate with that message.
Perfect. And if people want to reach out to you, where can they reach out to you?
JakeandGino.com. Just go to the website. We've got podcasts, we've got blogs, we've got articles. Just go on the website and find anything you want on there.
Just type Gino Barbaro anywhere. They can find you. Just go to Google, Yahoo, LinkedIn, Facebook. Just type Gino Barbaro. They can find you. I don't think is there any Gino.
I like the LinkedIn. LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn's a great place, my friend. You're right. It's a great platform.
And thank you so much, Gino, for your time, for your knowledge. And I really appreciate that. And I'll see you in next month.
Thanks, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gino. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on The Real Deal, a commercial real estate investing podcast, the show that covers everything to do with multifamily real estate investing to help you become an expert in your real estate ventures. We're here to help you create passive income and financial freedom so that you can achieve what you want whenever you want. We'll catch you next time on The Real Deal.